We're live. Oh. Now you see it.
There we go. Okay, well, good morning. Can I get a motion to reconvene in open session? Moved by Doug and Karen Quigley Hobbs second. All those in favor? It's approved. We're now in open session. Before we begin, we acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples of Canada. I would just note Sandy Shantz and colleague Jim are both sent regrets. Jim was at a police board or conference in Victoria and got caught up in the Air Canada strike. So he's doing a planes, trains, and automobiles to try and get home. And I think Sandy had something come up, so we acknowledge their regrets. Any declarations of pecuniary interest from the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to closed session recommendations. There is none. Delegations. We have a delegation with us today. If you can bring her in, Lorraine Grenier. See if we can bring her up.
Hello.
Hi. Okay.
Yeah.
Lorraine, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know what we're looking at, but
Holly needs to start the screen share. I don't know why we're looking at my videos right now. Something's wrong.
Do you have something you want to share, or do you?
Yeah, I have a delegation. I submitted it.
Okay, so
to the agenda.
We already have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the document which was shared with us. So if
Yes.
you can start. You have 10 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Good morning, Chairman McLean and members of the board. Welcome to Kitchener, clean as a kitchen. 63 years ago, my family and I drove into the city, and I'll never forget the sign. Coming from a remote, simple life in Saskatchewan, I suffered immediate culture shock. I'm a product of my environment. I'm vulnerable and I'm angry. Attached are two videos. Holly, can you play the Victoria School and Victoria Park Summer of 2024 video, please? And I'd like you to play the LRT platform video as well. Thank you, Holly. I'm a senior. I live in nonprofit affordable housing directly across the street from Victoria Park. The complex has two buildings, Victoria School and David Street. We have drug crime and violence. I cannot move. This is my housing. Victoria Park and the washroom at Victoria School and the Goggle Block. I've included a list of police occurrences for Victoria Park, Victoria School, and the assaults on myself in the park and in the complex. These are all my calls. There are many others from other tenants and residents in this community. Police inform us repeatedly to contact Ward 9 Council, and to date, we have had no support. Also listed are the occurrences, calls to police regarding drug addicted tenant that screams and yells, and you are all going to die. I'm going to cut your throats. This tenant launches projectiles off the balcony into the courtyard. An officer last summer told us 83 calls to the police for this tenant, and I'm sure it is now well over 100. It is not safe for us to go into the courtyard. Victoria School bleeds drug crime onto the Victoria Park and the David Street complex. In 2018, I did a petition within Ward 9 on the illegal drug crime inside the Victoria Park washroom, which continues today, creating a health and safety risk for people trying to enjoy the park with their families. I have included email and documents re Gockelblock. Gockelblock is not safe because of the large group, gang. This group occupied Victoria Park for 3+ years. I emailed the city countless times to remove the picnic tables from the clock tower area. And finally, after a violent attack to one of their own, July 31st, 2024, the tables were removed. Currently, the group now occupies the Gockelblock, drinking, drugging, yelling, screaming, fighting, intimidating the public by throwing racial slurs, public urination, and defecating. As well, I have included an email I sent April 13th, 2024 via publicinfo@Waterloo Regional Police Service.on.ca, outlining my concerns, drug crime in the park and in my complex. I received a response from Executive Support Officer, Office of the Chief, April 16th, 2024, who redirected my letter to Community Engagement and Wellbeing Branch. April 16th, 2024, I received an email from Patrol Platoon A officer asking me how I would like to communicate. I responded on April 16th, 2024. I indicated that email would be a good method to communicate. I also indicated that my main concerns were the Victoria School and the Victoria Park, asking what his thoughts would be on a community meeting with the tenants. Another email to the engagement officer, July 20th, 2025, and no response to date. I've been communicating with the officer since April 16th, 2024, and have yet to receive any correspondence. The situation at Victoria School, Victoria Park, and Gockelblock are unsafe. I requested a Freedom of Information report on calls to Victoria Park. I have included that report with the agenda. 2021 to 2024. Included is a copy of the report. Also a CTV News report outlining a delegation, June 24th, 2024, to the City of Kitchener Council by Waterloo Regional Police Service, outlining police concerns regarding lifting restrictions on alcohol in the park. That report was 2021-2023, indicating 5,366 calls to Victoria Park. Bill 6, Safer Communities Act 2025. Illegal drug consumption in St. John's Soup Kitchen, Shoppers Drug Mart, City Hall washrooms, Tim Hortons, Dollarama, CMHC laneway, library washrooms, and on public transit. Also, the parking garages downtown. Illegal drug consumption is everywhere, inside and outside. Bill 6, when? Public illegal drug consumption is an elevated risk to public health and safety. Toxic smoke and drug-induced psychosis. I have engaged members of my community who want Bill 6 enforced. Bill 6, when? Wait and see approach. Southern Ontario, including Toronto, have already started using enhanced powers given to them by the province. Attached is a post to Kitchener Centre constituents from MP for Kitchener Center, indicating 11,000 plus calls to downtown Kitchener by Waterloo Regional Police. Also, another post indicating that there is up to 75% of homeless who are addicted to substances. MP DeRitter is rallying for urgent reforms to Canada's bail system, specifically to better protect the public from high-risk repeat offenders. Repeal for Bill C-75 and Bill C-5. We need to stop the revolving door. It's time for bail reform. Included is a Council for Ward 9 newsletter asking community to support rescinding Bill 6. And an email I sent Ward 9 Council questioning why council member would want to put community and constituents at risk to toxic smoke from dangerous illegal drugs and the dangerous behavior, psychosis from people that use toxic drugs in places and spaces. There's no response to date. Some municipalities have learned the hard way that attempting to simply place individuals in so-called affordable housing in existing residential areas does not work. Drugs and violence soon followed, and that is the problem. I live in nonprofit housing. It's dangerous. You never hear in the media about the underbelly of community housing. Every day I watch the downtown, the park, and my complex die.
You just have 1 minute left. If you can wrap up,
Okay.
please.
I can't have my grandchildren live here or visit me here at this complex or this park. It's not safe. Thank you, Lorraine Grenier, constituent Ward 9, Kitchener Center, resident of Victoria Park neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation today. Any questions? Thank you for raising this issue with us.
You're welcome.
Okay. We're on to the consent agenda. There's items 8.1 to 8.10. Yes, there's one correction, I think, on 8.6. It's just the correct should be quarter two. It's a summary of procurement awards for quarter two. It has been corrected on the website, or it will be. Okay, so that was just a typo, but the correct report is there. The report's correct. It was just a typo.
No, the report is incorrect.
Oh,
Correct
okay.
report will be put on the website.
Okay, it's coming. Okay, can I get the mover for the consent agenda? There's nothing to take out. Moved by Doug, seconded by Chair Redmond. Any questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Business arising from the minutes. I don't think there is any correspondence. We have some good materials from Ms. Grenier. We move on to police services reports. I don't see any chief of police reports, or on to the chief. 12.1 strategic business plan 24 to 27 progress report number 3. I think Chief Amanda is joining us, but I'll start with you. Have I got that right?
Thanks, Chair McLean, members of the board. Good morning. Thanks very much. Yeah, we're happy to work through a number of Chief of Police reports today. We're welcomed for the first one by Strategic Planner Amanda Franceschini, who will be giving us a progress report for our strategic business plan. So over to you, Amanda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to present on the progress of the WRPS Strategic Business Plan. We are halfway through year 2 of 4. Several champions and positions accountable are contributing to the 4 goals, 13 objectives, and 31 strategies, ultimately getting us closer to our desired future state. Now, the strategies are meant to be selective, reach-ahead initiatives, and unique to this cycle, stemming from the scanning evidence we collected in 2023. They are detailed in an attachment. At this point in the cycle, WRPS has achieved, also known as carried out the actions in full, of 5 strategies. 12 more are anticipated to be completed by the end of year 2, and that would place us with half completed by the halfway point. To highlight the successes that have followed our first project management under the goal of our resources, WRPS has additionally advanced 3 other goals. In our commitment to safety, where we aim to reduce violent crime and recidivism, we have forged stronger investigative collaborations to reduce harm caused by organized crime. And this includes a focus on organized crime groups as identified through provincial threat assessments and in response to trends, and proactive intelligence-led projects and enhanced tools such as eye-based charts. We've also advanced our connections by communicating and engaging through enhanced internal and external communication strategies. And we've advanced the goal of our members by managing change through implementing a consistent change management framework. And this includes change management screening forms for all projects that should all now be funneled through the Project Governance Committee, which will now queue the appropriate change tools, change coaching, and change assessments. And the results of those applications point to further focused intentional efforts that we weren't doing in that same way 2 years ago. You'll note in the report the inclusion of key performance metrics and means ends matrix tags that are under the achieved strategies. Now, this is a cue reinforcing a shift in mindset that strategy owners may be done their tactics, also known as the actions that satisfy the strategy, but that measuring and monitoring continues. Key performance indicators will be provided through the strategy owners, and police performance metrics that are longer term or have service-wide or region-wide stakeholders can be provided through strategic services. And this will be an accumulation over the cycle of the business plan. This coincides with the movement from counting things or checking boxes to evaluation to assessing performance against our theories of change. The next steps, well, data is key to ensure the plan remains a compelling document to guide the organization, and we're due for some pulse checks. This is dependent on efforts, as in it's not appropriate to ask everyone everything all over again. But as we've made some advances, we can now frame them with communication, and that's where some tools such as driver cards may come into play, reminding people of the original problem, examples of the actions WRPS has taken, and then queuing for a response, whether it's metrics such as qualitative or quantitative. These would be one-pagers that could be a different medium to reach more masses. Also, we can target these communications to specific audiences or randomly sample, depending on the size of the audience predicted to be impacted by those efforts. We can also leverage existing touch points. So for example, externally, there were suggestions way back in the beginning from our working groups that we could mirror recruitment events for visibility. We could take advantage of our customer service app to have that digital connection. Our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office is a great source for community partnership connections to establish community liaisons who can do some information collecting on our behalf, as there's some existed trusting relationships and likely already scheduled gatherings. And we can also use our public touch points for digital sharing. So for example, at our open house, we had a QR code for anyone to take some of the trust and confidence in police questions. So with that, I will turn it back over to the chief for any questions or comments from the board.
Thank you, Amanda. Questions or comments from the board? Chief, anything you want to add just before we wrap up?
Thanks, Amanda. And we always credit Amanda for being our main coordinator for all the flurry of activity across the service. And I just want to acknowledge, this is a 4-year plan compared to a 3-year plan. So It doesn't mean we're taking a slower approach to our efforts and achievements, but there just is that adjusted trajectory. And we're working very hard to achieve these through multiple actions and multiple commitments. So we look forward to the further progress reports and recognizing that there's fundamental activities happening across the organization and across the community to reach our strategic goals. So thanks very much, Amanda, for keeping us on track, and we'll look forward to further progress reports coming up.
Okay, thank you. Next up, I think, is report 12.2, agenda item 12.2, June 2025 financial variance report. You can start with that, Chief, and then I think Kirsten Hand's joining us.
Thanks very much. Yep, Kirsten Hand, our Director of Finance and Assets, is here to walk us through this report. So over to you, Kirsten. Thank you.
Morning. Just share my screen. Thank you. So the report before you today outlines that the financial results as of June year-to-date 2025. For the operating budget for June year-to-date, we closed at approximately 91% of the approved budget year-to-date. At this point, we are forecasting a surplus of $1.6 million, or equivalent to 0.6%. However, we will note that there are a number of factors that could impact this forecasted number, including the payment of cost of living and civilian job evaluation, retro payments, levels of overtime, and projected staffing levels. For staffing costs, we are below the budget year-to-date. However, I will note that cost of living and other contractual agreement adjustments back to January 1st have not yet been processed in these results, as well as any impacts related to the civilian job evaluation adjustment. So that will be done in Q3 and will remove some of the positive variance that you're seeing year-to-date. We continue to see savings from various leaves, such as maternity and paternity leaves, as well as staffing levels have been below authorized levels to date. Although I will note, as of August, we are slightly above the authorized levels, so that will level out. Overtime continues to be over budget, predominantly related to staff shortages. However, we have seen overtime hours decrease year-over-year by 24%. Benefits, again, once those retroactive adjustments are made, that will come with some benefit costs associated with them, but to date, we are below plan. For non-staffing related items, I'll just touch on a couple of these. For materials and supplies, we have seen savings resulted with fuel costs with the elimination of the federal carbon tax on April 1st. And year-to-date, we have seen some positive variances relating to firearm supply and uniform costs. Small equipment, we are over budget, but that is due to some items that I'll expand on in the revenue section related to higher grant and recovery type purchases. For services, we are under budget by about $300K due to lower year-to-date purchased services and investigation expenses. Fees were under budget due to lower consulting and counseling fees compared to plan, which is offset by higher software licensing fees, which is a timing item. Communication costs, we are under budget due to lower telecommunication costs and NG911 type emergency 911 expenses. But again, that's a timing issue and will catch up by year end. We have seen some savings in meetings, training, and conferences to date. We are over budget on revenue related to record checks by about $100K, pay duty, which again impacts our expenses, And we have seen higher recoveries for items such as courses that we have offered to other police services or other bodies, as well as some CSO related expenses. So that means that your expenses are over budget, but your revenue is also over budget. For ministry grants, we have some timing related to our community and safety policing grant, which will level out by year end. We have received some additional funding that was not yet known at the time when the budget was created, of about 254K, and that relates to a couple different grants, including the hate crime extremism investigative team, mobile crisis response team, and the provincial strategy to protect children from sexual abuse and exploitation on the internet. We did receive the contract for our court security and prisoner transportation grant, and unfortunately that did reduce from last year's levels, which will be a permanent negative impact on our full year budget of about 600K. For capital, we spent 8.7 million, or 28% of the budget to date. At this point, we're forecasting to spend about 6.7 million with about 200K of savings. We're forecasting to carry forward about 6.7 million. We have replaced 53 vehicles to date. We will be implementing our automated asset system at our North Division and automated evidence management system at our South Division. That system was completed and installed at Central Division to date. We're into year 2 of our Emergency Services Cooperative Group, or ESCO, replacing of the fingerprinting hardware and software. It started in 2024, will conclude in 2025. We also have the replacement of our NICE logger hardware and software, which is used in our communication center. Phase 2 of the HRIS system was implemented this year. Body-worn video was expanded to Central Division. Next Generation 911 will be implemented this fall and will conclude. We continue to expand our video conference at our facilities. And we also have the closed circuit television capital project, whereby half of it is funded by a grant. And we've now received that equipment and working with municipalities for the implementation of that. For facilities, there will be solar panel installations at New Central Division. The contract was just awarded to a vendor. We moved the backup communication center from Old Central to New Central, and that has concluded. And we're working on design to renovate the remainder of that 3rd floor. We have implemented electric vehicle charging stations at South for employee and public use, and at Central Division to support our electric vehicle strategy. We continue to implement security enhancements. We will be installing an uninterrupted power system at our investigative services building in South Division. This one will end up carrying forward into 2026. To continue our design work for the future public safety communication center. And lastly, we continue with our renewal projects at our existing buildings. Thank you. If there are any questions.
Hey, thank you, Kirsten. Chair Ribbon.
Thank you. And Kirsten, I don't know if this is a question for you or the chief. You mentioned overtime costs. Can you just talk a little bit, dive a little bit deeper into the drivers for overtime?
Sure, I can start, and then maybe Kirsten can pick up. So it has been recognized that in the past couple of years, as we've been catching up for staffing pressures and vacancies, we have achieved full authorized staffing by the end of 2024, and that trend has continued with our hiring into 2025. So it does not mean mission accomplished, because those who we've hired, we need to onboard, train, and for them to ease into their roles. But we have had for last year and a half a dedicated overtime working committee that is looking through every granular driver and pressure related to overtime costs. So the vast majority, and we can provide specifics, but I know that the vast majority of overtime hours are going into filling frontline role positions and also some of our investigative services roles. Some of the unplanned overtime has been some of our operational deployments. So when we're conducting warrant executions, emergency response team, arrests and warrant executions, when we're deploying our public safety teams for things across the region that require that mobilization. Those are unanticipated overtime costs, as well as some of our major events that require those additional things. So this is a very dedicated group of professionals across the organization looking to analyze every aspect possible. We have made some good headway on missed lunches. So that is one category that is controllable to a point where officers have in a 12-hour shift, we're trying to ensure that they're getting their break for wellness purposes and for their operational consistency across the organization. And so to date, we have seen about a 20 to 25% reduction in overtime compared to 2024 and previous years. And we're into the thick of summer months where there's periods of leaves and absence. So Kirsten, there may be a couple other drivers to speak to, but we are attending to this with as much attention and focus as possible for the financial accountability, but also for the wellness considerations on our members as well. So Kirsten, if you can pick up anything I've missed.
No, the only thing I may add is that June year to date, 93% of our overtime hours were for patrol and investigative service units.
Thank you.
Tony?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I just to add on to that, just through a recent ride along I did, unfortunately, the nature of the role is not that there's, clearly articulated times where you can say, well, time to check out for lunch right now. Unfortunately, they're dealing with very dynamic situations. And I noted that during my ride along very much so. That's the nature of the role of the officers online. So when you say 93%, it gives me some ease that that's where it is, because that's where I noticed it. The other question is I just asked is just to the overall well-being of the officers when they're not being able to take proper breaks from a highly stressful roles, and then the demands of the role, to do overtime. I'm always concerned. I kind of build on to what Chair Redmond had just started, and that I think we're always thinking of the well-being of the service and its fine men and women, that they're not being overly taxed, right, in order to perform at peak levels that we require. So it's more of a comment. Thank you.
I guess just pulling on the OT, because that's been a big thing, is whether it's Chief or Kirsten. So the good news is OT is down 24% year over year. That's good. I think I heard, whether it was Amanda or you, saying we're at basically full complement now, or maybe it was the chief. So we're up to full complement, which is a driver of overtime when we're not at full complements, because we have to fill it with overtime. But those people have to be onboarded. And so when you put all the pluses and the minuses, and of course we'll have some growth, but if we're fully complement now and we still have overtime that's over what we had budgeted, I guess what I'm getting at is, are we still heading in the right direction? So it's down 24%, but is it going to continue to go down as we get the full complement? They're badged, that they have to be onboarded. They won't, when they can fully be a functioning frontline officer. Do we expect that OT to continue to go down? And I guess the second question I have, maybe want to start here, Amanda or Kirsten, is we will always have some form of overtime budgeting, because there is stuff that happens, whether there's a flu epidemic in the wintertime or people go off. So we will have an overtime budget, but we have an idea of what that would look like in a steady state. So maybe start there, and then where do we think it's headed? Because that's, to Tony and Karen's point, part of the reason for doing the hiring is to make sure wellness, we've got appropriate staff levels to do what we need to do. I just want to know how the two pieces connect.
Yes, so our full year budget is just over $4 million for overtime. We have noted that we have been over that budget consistently for a number of years, which is partly why we also created the overtime working group to ensure that we're monitoring that, and that as we get to full complement that we are seeing those reductions. The other thing that we're doing is we have hired a consultant to inform, to create a simulation model and help inform future budgeting to better understand what is the proper number of authorized that we need on in our patrol division in order to respond to calls, so that they're not having to work overtime in order to meet those service levels. So yeah, we do anticipate to see overtime going down as we reach authorized levels, but we're also doing that review to ensure that we are budgeting appropriately for the number of members that we need to meet those community needs.
I think that's helpful, is that there'll always be an overtime budget, but if there's an appropriate, and whether it's regional, Waterloo, or private sector, all have overtime allotments to manage for those occurrences. And I think that's, if we're heading in the right direction, is what I hear you saying over time. Sorry, Tony,
Just
go
as
ahead.
a follow-up through you, Mr. Chair. So I think another thing, I appreciate the input, Kirsten. The other thing I picked up there is we say full complement. I think what we're saying is, based on our strategic initiative of hiring and what and the complement we were seeking several years ago, we're at those levels that we were anticipating and we wanted to do strategically. It doesn't necessarily mean that that is at the complement of sworn or civilian service members that we need in order to manage the aspects of the community relative to public safety. Just because when you say full complement, people think, oh, then you should be running, if there's inefficiency in the operation, right? But that's not what we're talking about. And I think that's what I picked up. I just wanted to highlight that I've heard that correctly when we use that term. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. That is correct. And just to show, so Kirsten is correct. The board will receive the staffing consultants' feedback on the efficiency of our operations and giving us some modeling for strategic planning purposes moving forward. But in the moment, I just want to reiterate to the board and the public is our overtime right now is striving to meet minimal deployment standards. So that is filling critical positions so that we're responsive and accountable to our service levels today. And then those exigencies that occur. But within our model right now, you've heard reference to our real-time operations center. We have a centralized view on operations 24 hours a day. And we're, with fluidity, moving resources throughout the region to fill any temporary absences that occur, any huge exigencies that pop up in any corner of the region. We can redeploy teams and resources as necessary. And that within this year, we've moved to a very fluid staffing structure so that we're looking at call for service demands throughout 24 hours, but also throughout the whole week. And we've acclimatized our staffing levels to be responsive to some of those peak demands, such as on weekends, to ensure that it's not just one solid block of staffing level. There's a minimum standard, but we've also adjusted some of our efficiencies to ensure that we're not wasting a minute, a dollar, or a deployment capacity. So happy to provide any level of detail to the board. Some of this will come through budgeting as we look forward to projections for 2026 and beyond.
So Chief, just one last thing on this. I don't want to beat it to death, but like we just had badging ceremony. I think it was 18 officers in July, if I'm not mistaken. just because they're badged, I guess this connects back to what you're talking about. Once they've been badged, they still have onboarding. They need, you know, they're not fully functioning to get in a cruiser and go and stand a post or do whatever needs to be done on patrol. That's all, that's part of it, is that you hire the people. There is a process before they are able to fully function. And this is where the combination of the hiring's been done, but the overtime fills those gaps that still exist until those new officers are fully functioning. I mean, that's a chunk of it there, which what you've just described, to make sure that there's always the minimum standards. And right now we're having to, overtime needs to fill some of that until the officers are fully functioning. Have I got that right? Because I'm like Tony, I don't want to leave the impression that that the two are separate. They're inextricably linked, and continue to be so, but we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And complementing all of this, this is a local discussion, and what happens here matters the most. But the Inspectorate General of Ontario is undertaking this conversation, this analysis now, is to say, what is adequate and effective response for community safety in every community? We're feeding information, input, and data into their analysis as well, and we want to ensure that our community is safe, but also we want to meet those standards across Ontario as well for our responsiveness and our role in upholding community safety. And this is central to the discussion in terms of how many people do we need in terms of deployment and the efficiency of how they are structured and staffed across the organization and the region.
Okay, thank you, Kirsten, for the update. No other questions. We'll move on to item 12.3, and this is police reported crime stats in Canada 2024. Who's introducing this? Chief, and then Aaron Van Dahl is joining us.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the introductions today, give the deputies a breather. So very happy to welcome one of our amazing strategic planners, Aaron Van Dahl, who's going to walk us through a disclosure of Statistics Canada data, but is going to localize it to talk about impacts in Waterloo region. So over to you, Aaron. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you see my screen okay? Pop that back up.
It's not displaying yet. We just see you, but just take a moment to see if you can trigger it, and I'll let you know.
All right, does that show?
Nothing yet.
All right.
Don't worry, it never works when people try to share this.
The most?
There we go. Looks like
Okay. And do you see my background screen, or are you seeing just the slide?
No, we're good.
We're good? Okay. Thank you for your patience and for the introduction. This presentation will cover highlights from Statistics Canada's reported crime 2024 Jurastat that was released in July 2022. As an overview, since 1962, Statistics Canada has collected information on all criminal incidents reported by Canadian Police Services through its annual Uniform Crime Reporting Survey. The survey results and corresponding data tables are released annually by Statistics Canada. Included in the report are calculations of crime rates, which are crime counts relative to the population of the area, providing a straightforward measure of the volume of crime. Crime severity indexes, which are a weighted approach based on the incarceration rate and average length of prison sentence for violations, capturing both the volume and severity of the crime. And weighted clearance rates, which are the proportion of criminal incidents solved by the police and weighted by the seriousness of the crime. For brevity, we focus on the CSI and the weighted clearance rates in this presentation. First, I present the total CSI over the past 5 years for the 12 largest municipal police services in Ontario, which I'll refer to as the Big 12, the province, and the nation. Police services are ordered in a ratio of police officers to population using the most current information available from StatsCan, with Windsor having the largest cop to pop and Halton region having the smallest. And you'll see that Waterloo region has the second smallest cop to pop, falling immediately to the left of Halton. In 2024, Waterloo Region's CSI was 72.68. We ranked second highest among the Big 12, falling above the Big 12 median of 62 and the provincial CSI of 60.7, and we are below the national CSI of 77.9. Looking at our CSI over time, we see that over the last decade, Waterloo Region CSI has been trending upward, with the red line indicating the forecasted upward growth trend. However, the CSI has decreased for the past 2 years. Compared to 2023, Waterloo Region CSI declined by 4.4%. This decrease is on par with the national decrease of 4.1% and larger than the provincial decrease of 1.4% compared to the previous year. In explaining this observed decline, we separate out the violent and non-violent CSI components. The violent CSI includes crimes against persons such as homicides, sex assaults, robberies, uttering threats, and others. Again, over 10 years, we see that the violent CSI has increased over time, as indicated by the red line. In 2024, Waterloo Region's violent CSI was 91.4, a decrease of 1.75%. Despite this decrease, our violent CSI continues to rank fourth largest among the Big 12 and exceed the provincial violent CSI. However, we continue below the National Violent Crime Severity Index. Moving on to the non-violent CSI, this includes both property crime and other criminal code violations like drug offenses. Like the violent crime, the non-violent CSI in the region has also increased over the last decade, though not as steeply, again as indicated by the red line. In 2024, WRPS had a non-violent CSI of 65.8. We continue to rank high among the Big 12 with the second largest non-violent CSI, and we exceed the provincial levels as well. But we also experienced a decline of 5.7% in our non-violent CSI compared to 2023. This was the fourth largest decrease among the Big 12 and was on par with a decrease at the national level and greater than the decrease seen at the provincial level. The weighted clearance rates represent proportion of criminal incidents solved by police, weighted by the severity of the offenses. Clearance rates tend to be higher for violent crime than for non-violent crime. Waterloo Region's total weighted clearance rate was 32.1, falling below the Big 12 median, the provincial rate, and the national rate. The same is true for Waterloo Region's violent weighted clearance rate of 44.73 and non-violent clearance rate of 25.1. WRPS clearance rates have been improving slowly and went up by 3.9% compared to 2023. This is the largest gain in weighted clearance rates since 2016 for the service. These statistics are not something that we look at once a year when they're published by Statistics Canada, but instead have been used to inform the priorities for our crime suppression strategy and to monitor our progress throughout the year. 3 specific crimes were selected to focus on for our strategy. These are firearms violations, specifically using, discharging, and pointing a firearm, robbery, and break and enter. These crimes were selected in part due to their contribution towards the Crime Severity Index and have been a focus for us since 2023. Of note is that over the last 5 years across Canada, the number of firearms violations has been steadily increasing. In Ontario, they were relatively stable, with a notable increase in 2024. In Waterloo Region, we saw this spike earlier in 2022 when the rate jumped from 8.3 to 13.6 violations per 100,000 population. Over the last 2 years, WRPS has decreased the number of firearm violations to below the provincial and national rates. For robberies, we tend to see more fluctuation in their rates due to the cross-jurisdictional nature of the crime. The rate of robberies in Waterloo Region tends to follow similar patterns across the rest of the province. Break and enters have the highest weight of all the property crime violations towards the CSI, and decreases across Canada last year was a significant contributor to the overall decrease in Canada's Crime Severity Index. Locally, the decrease of 17.8% was even greater than the decreases seen provincially and nationally, and brings Waterloo Region to its lowest rate of break and enters in over 20 years. The WRPS crime suppression strategy goes beyond reducing these three violations and is a playbook by which WRPS will continue to reduce crime in Waterloo Region. It is focused on institutionalizing crime reduction into everyday operations, whether through enforcement or engagement efforts. They are organized, systematic, clear, and fair in their distribution of work and responsibility, and accountability forms the foundation for success. Our crime reduction goals are based on previous year's crime statistics, recent increases or significant changes, concerns in the community, and other organizational specific considerations. They're meant to be deliberate, focused in development, and prioritized across units and areas of the organization. Our goal for 2025 is to further reduce gun violence, robberies, and break-and enters by 10%. And this is just one component of the crime suppression strategy. WRPS applies evidence-based strategies to reduce crime, along with the support of community partners. Action planning addresses short and long-term crime trends using offender, location, and community-focused strategies. Investigators are in daily contact with other police agencies to investigate and solve crimes involving offenders from outside Waterloo Region. Partnerships have been established with the business community to apply prevention tactics, identify suspects, and bring offenders to justice. Patrol officers conduct directed patrol in strategic locations and conduct compliance checks on priority offenders. And WRPS has collaborated with agencies across the province to make information about firearms offenders more readily accessible. WRPS has made great strides in the implementation of this multi-year strategy, and we look forward to sharing our progress further with you throughout the year. I'll turn it over to Chief for any further comments.
Thank you, Aaron. Chief?
Thanks, Aaron. It's always sobering with some of the stats can data. There is a lag in terms of like how that comes to the national landscape and conversation, but really appreciate the work that our members are doing to localize it. And also, as she's highlighted in the last slide, Deputy Davis and all of those members committed to the crime suppression stratified policing strategies are really working hard to address these highest levels of violence and victimization. And the evidence-based approach that we're taking is really starting to mobilize us as an organization, but also we're starting to see some great results. So that commitment will continue, as Aaron has highlighted. So nothing further from me. We can dive into this at any level, and we can also follow up with any questions that you have if there's further analysis that you're interested in.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions or comments from the board? It's always helpful to kind of put this in context to where we are relative to the rest of the country. Okay, I think we're moving. Thank you, Aaron. We're moving on to 12.4, Canada Day 2025 operational report. Chief, you're on intro duty today, so you can introduce Inspector Mulholland, I think, is coming to join us, and you're up next.
Thanks very much. So Inspector Jason Mulholland is going to provide the operational report for Canada Day. And just want to acknowledge, as he'll walk through, this is a significant deployment for this event. And it's building off now a couple of years of knowledge building and working with our community partners on how to approach this event in coordination with a lot of other celebrations and activities across the region. So over to you, Jason, to walk us through, and look forward to any discussion to follow. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. Let me just, okay, Holly, you're going to share the screen? Okay, fantastic. So good afternoon, Chair McLean and Vice Chair Redmond and members of the board. Today I'm going to give you a brief overview of our Canada Day operation that recently happened on July 1st. So as with every Canada Day, we had numerous events across the region. Every major city and township had events across for Canada Day. And of recent concerns were the increasing incidents in youth violence as far as shooting off fireworks in an unsafe manner during these events. We had issues during Victoria Day and Victoria Park, and therefore we anticipated we may have those same issues this year. However, we still had to make the plan from a regional perspective because we weren't sure where these incidents would happen. So we had to make sure that we were flexible and could deploy anywhere else. So we created a very robust operational plan involving some of our partner agencies as far as the City of Kitchener Municipal Enforcement Services and Regional Waterloo Paramedic Services. WRPS deployed 75 additional members from a variety of units across our service, including units from the Crime Suppression Analysis Response Teams, Public Order Unit, the Project Team, a General Investigations Unit, to assist neighborhood policing. We deployed both plainclothes and uniform officers. So Holly, if you can go to the next slide, please. So this slide gives us a very brief deployment overview here. In the end, we did have the issue as far as fireworks incidents in Victoria Park in the City of Kitchener, at which point we deployed WRPS officers as well as Kitchener bylaw and our paramedic services partners to mitigate the risk to public safety. I'm just going to go over a very brief timeline kind of events here. At about 5 p.m., youth began to gather in the park, and our deployment strategy was to be very proactive with our officers, making sure that we can deter or interdict any persons that maybe have fireworks. And on multiple occasions, officers did seize fireworks from some of the youth. Officers were engaged in investigations involved in the Criminal Code, Trespass Property Act, and bylaw offenses. At 9:45, WRPS members began to systematically disperse the youth in Victoria Park, filtering them away from Kitchener City Hall. We had a very large gathering of persons in downtown Kitchener for the pyrotechnic display, and we wanted to make sure none of the youth were going to end up downtown Kitchener causing any of the issues. At about 11 p.m., Victoria Park was cleared. However, when you move large groups of youth, they do end up in the residential neighborhoods and surrounding areas. And by about 11:45, everything was wrapped up. We had no significant injury reports or significant incidents. If you can move to the next slide, please. So this is kind of our summary of where we were at arrests and charges, and we did deploy with the intent that anytime we had grounds for an arrest that we were going to arrest in order to deter some of this activity at this event and also in the future. We ended up with 10 arrests and for a total of 22 charges. A few of our arrests were for outstanding warrants. One was for an attempted robbery in relation to an incident at a fireworks vendor that had occurred several days before. Our officers had identified the person that had committed that offense. One was for fail to comply to a release order, and then we had various weapon offenses. We had a few additional arrests for provincial stats that were handled by provincial offenses notices. If you can advance the next slide, please. And as with every single operation that we do in policing, there's always a cost. In WRPS, we estimate the cost that we incurred here at just above $85,000. And that kind of concludes the presentation. So I'll turn it over to back to the chief for questions.
Anything further, Chief? Go to the
nothing further. Deputy Davis was, obviously helping to support and oversee and was present during the deployment as well. I don't know, Deputy, if you have any comments to offer just in terms of perspective. I commented just sort of to set things up that we've learned a lot from our deployment from 2024 and now in 2025 for both Canada Day and Victoria Day. So we're tracking the trajectory of things. So Jen, do you have any further comments to support?
Jason, thanks very much for providing that report. I can say I was out for the duration of the event this year and was really impressed by the response, not only from our members, but also our partners, bylaw as well, and paramedic services. What I can say for anyone who's down there is that the event can become quite chaotic quite quickly. I would speak to the efforts of our members to maintain public safety. under chaotic circumstances, as well as to be able to keep composure and handle those situations with large crowds of people gathering, knowing that our members are outnumbered by these large crowds at certain times. So I thought it was a well executed plan. And we learned from all of these from debriefing after the fact, and we have done that with the municipality and with bylaw. So again, we will just continue to move forward and respond appropriately to these situations.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I just don't want to perseverate on overtime. And I know when we were talking before, we were talking about wellness and officer support, but I think this is a really good example. The report said 75 officers, both uniform and plain clothes, and that's the kind of response we need to make sure that we have good outcomes. And clearly, this was a successful operation. But I would, so I guess Deputy Davis, to you, that ability to use overtime to respond appropriately to very fluid or somewhat unpredictable gatherings, I would think is a really important use of that ability to be flexible in staffing issues.
Yes, absolutely, Chair Redmond. I would say in this situation, it allowed for all of our patrol officers that were assigned to their divisions and to assign to their zones to actually maintain service to the rest of the community. These officers were separate from our regular patrol officers that were still working and responding to regular calls for service and ensuring that the rest of the community and rest of the region was safe as well. We can't do one without having the ability to use overtime to help support these other initiatives.
And if I could just make an observation, Deputy Davis, it's great that you acknowledged bylaw officers, whether they're in an area municipality or at the region. I know we all rely on that partnership to make sure that we're all able to adequately fulfill whatever our appropriate roles. So thank you.
Any other questions? I just wanted to the number, and I'm not sure I saw it in the report, and I hate to bring up St. Patty's Day, but no, just in context, we have 24 and we had fireworks in Victoria Park, and then we had Canada Day, and so we're managing, larger crowds. What would the order of magnitude be of both the May 2-4 and the Canada Day? Like, is it 10,000? Is it 5,000? Is it 30,000? What would you say? And I know it's not. I'm not trying to necessarily draw it too directly to St. Patty's, but that was a huge number. But when you have big numbers of people in a space like that, and to your point, it takes a significant presence to be able to manage it. So just for order of magnitude, for my interest, what would either Inspector Mulholland or Deputy Davis, what would that number look like?
Do you want me to take this one, Deputy?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. All the friends, there's more info.
Okay. So Chair McLean, St. Patrick's Day is always at this point going to be the largest deployment that we have across the service. It draws the most number of people. And essentially, it's a lot of university students that come from across the province, and they're looking for that unsanctioned gathering. So the dynamic of the crowd at St. Patrick's Day is actually easier for us to deal with than this issue that we had on Canada's Day. So some of the intelligence that we had in advance of Canada Day was they were looking at having tens of thousands of people in downtown Kitchener. That was of great concern, to make sure that we didn't have those fireworks events in an area that is very densely packed, because that's just a recipe where there's going to be significant injuries. In this case, the reports that I had is like there were hundreds of youth that were involved in this, as well as families in other port than Victoria Park. And then the other difference between St. Patrick's Day and this event is St. Patrick's Day is very densely packed on like one street of Marshall and Regina. This was kind of in the area of downtown Kitchener, and then Victoria Park is a very large footprint, so it's even more spread out than we would be in St. Patrick's Day. So, but every time that we deploy in a public order or in a capacity like this, we're highly outnumbered. And, one of the strategies that we did use was to have some plainclothes officers in the crowd that could direct us to go where we could more effectively with the resources that we had. But definitely St. Patrick's Day is significantly more people. And I'm always very guarded about saying how many people are there, because that's typically we have a bias to say there's significantly more people than actually are there unless we use some methodology to do that.
No, that's fine. I mean, but it still requires critical mass of officers to manage. It wasn't a couple of dozen. I mean, you were hundreds into the thousands and you're managing that. And I think that's the context piece, is there's a cost to these types of public events, particularly St. Patty's is unsanctioned, but to some extent this is as well. So that's very helpful.
Well, it's notable that it seems quite calm in Cambridge compared to KW.
Of course it is.
But we're well behaved down
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Okay, any other questions? If not, thank you, Inspector Mulholland and Deputy Davis. I think we're moving on. 12.5, Community Safety and Wellbeing feature, and this is Intimate Partner Violence and Gender-Based Violence Hub Model Service Delivery. And Chief, are you doing intros? You're continuing to do intros, and Inspector Matthias is joining us, I think.
Yeah, it's the last one. So thank you. Inspector Matthias is going to provide an overview of Community Safety Wellbeing Plan feature for this month. And I'll turn it over to you, Aaron, to walk us through this month's topic. Thanks.
Thanks, and good afternoon. I'll share my screen. Good afternoon, Chief, Chair McLean, and members of the board. I'm very pleased to join you today to provide a brief community safety wellbeing update specific to the intimate partner violence, gender-based violence in missing and murdered Indigenous women action table. Our community safety and wellbeing plan brings together agencies from across sectors to bring action and collective impact to our region's 4 major priorities. And similarly, through 8 multi-sector partners, the Family Violence Project provides services to survivors of these forms of violence and is really the cornerstone of our region's IPV and GBV action table. Previously reported to the board, you may recognize this slide, and shared to the action table members were the StatsCan figures pictured here, indicating a high rate of intimate partner violence victimization in Waterloo region as compared to the rest of Ontario. And from 2023, we would see 359 victims of intimate partner violence per 100,000, where our national average sits at 354. Similarly, in 2023, Waterloo region experienced a higher rate of victimization per 100,000 people for human trafficking at 4.6 victims per 100,000 people, and the national average of 1.4. To contextualize these rates, we conducted an analysis on the rates of intimate partner violence and gender-based violence victimization per 100,000 people in municipalities who are using similar hub service delivery model, similar to the Family Violence Project. These rates are reflected using the StatsCan Census Metropolitan Area, or CMA information, which was acquired specifically for this report. I should note that while we are above average, there are 4 other municipalities in Ontario which experience higher rates than Waterloo region. To begin with intimate partner violence victimization rate, the slide demonstrates that in 2023, the victimization rates are lower for CMAs with IPV and GBV support hub models, and we used our region, St. Catharines, Niagara, and Barrie, Ontario. The average rate of 292 victims per 100,000 people versus those without, averaging 315 victims per 100,000 people. When assessing victimization rates for gender-based violence, we observe an opposite trend. CMAs with hub models average 267 GBV victims per 100,000 people, while CMAs without hub models averaged 249 victims per 100,000 people. Unfortunately, not captured are the models most closely resembling the Family Violence Project, based in both Peel Region and York Region. These numbers were blended with the City of Toronto, which does not operate a hub service model, so we're unable to provide a more succinct analysis. Also not considered were the length of time that the hub model has been present, which speaks to public awareness and accessibility. We do know, however, that IPV and GBV are issues that are significantly underreported to police and other systems of support. The Family Violence Project in the hub model of service delivery allows for the provision of industry-leading trauma-informed approaches to care, co-located services that create multiple pathways to support, reporting, and a client care continuum that centers survivor needs. Additionally, co-location gives our FVP partners the ability to pilot and implement innovative programs like early intervention and engaging men, and the ability to quickly identify trends, leverage multiple points of information to develop responsive evidence-based policy and programs. I'd like to quickly introduce and finish here an upcoming initiative at WRPS and building upon the region of Waterloo's International Airport's partnership with Not In My City. We've committed to deliver the anti-human trafficking training provided by this organization to all WRPS members. This training module will equip both our sworn and civilian professional members with the ability to identify the risk factors, recognize signs of human trafficking, and aiming to prevent, disrupt, and end human trafficking in our region. We also intend to bring this information campaign to our partners at the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan. Thank you.
Chief, anything to add?
No, thanks, Aaron, for that. And just very proud of the work that we're doing. I just had an opportunity with some regional colleagues to attend AMO in Ottawa to champion and to seek some further support for our collaborative models, the Family Violence Project, and we continue to host a best-in-class model here in Waterloo Region. And there's great work happening locally to bolster the network of and continuum of care that we have. So those efforts are ongoing, led by many of our members, but many community leaders and organizations across Waterloo Region. And Aaron's just given us a very short preview of the Not In My City partnership. This is part of a movement towards ending human trafficking. And again, the region has taken a leadership role on introducing the program to the international airport, but there are further steps to come in how we can mobilize our community for education, awareness, and reporting on issues related to human trafficking and gender-based violence. So good initiatives and more to come.
I find the report very sobering because there's lots of times we want to be number one in the country and say we lead in all kinds of things. This is not something we want to lead on. And I guess I struggle, and I appreciate the report. The numbers need to be the numbers. I guess I kind of like, is part of this that we are getting more reporting? And we've talked about this before, that more people are comfortable reporting, therefore our numbers are high, like at least the pure number itself, let alone the percentages, our numbers are higher. I'd like to think as a community, a progressive community in lots of ways, that there is some reason why we are, at the
sobering.
It is very sobering. And it's not to lay it on you. This is a community thing. Any thoughts on that? Because I don't want to whitewash and say, well, it's because more people are reporting. But I struggle to understand why we are at the top, at the higher end versus being better on this front. And any thoughts on that, Chief?
Yeah, I think you're hitting the right note and asking the right questions. Is every expert when it comes to intimate partner violence or gender-based violence will say it's underreported. It's the same with hate crimes. So it's actually a strong indicator of a healthy community where you have multiple partners working together to raise awareness, education, means of intervention, and then support for survivors and victims. So the models that we have are working, and whether there's a criminal justice system solution or approach, or whether we can match somebody to the appropriate partners to provide that continuum of care. Things are happening here. We just need to continue to invest in the system issues we have right now and continue to modernize our approach to managing all of that. So we have the right people and the right organizations. We just need, as our community grows, to build it out further. And I would just highlight, as the community continues to diversify and grow, it's more important than ever to ensure that we are reducing every barrier to reporting and support possible, that no individual, no family, and no neighborhood or community is left without solutions and support. And I know that our partners are committed to that, and that's why we're continuing to bring this forward, and that's why it's a priority for our community safety and well-being plan to continue to hit every note that we can on it.
Chair Redmond.
I was just going to reflect on how important it is that we have Inspector Matthias, who came to Roma last January, and the chief that came to AMO. We come with data-informed experiences, and I think it was really important that the comment was made that both Peel and York were blended into the GTA, and it doesn't give you as clean a stat as you would like to have. Our program is 20 years old, and we can demonstrate the impact, but also make a compelling case for grant applications and funding to the province. And that always is an issue. So the chief did a great job of presenting where we're at and has already referenced the community safety and well-being plan. So we continue to engage the broader community as we go forward. And I think this last slide where we talk about not in my city, and it's something the region has led at the airport, but we're going to expand it, also demonstrates we're not resting on our laurels. We realize that there's 20-year track record of great collaboration with partners within the community, but we do continue to improve it. And I know WRPS are committed to it, as is the region. And as we go forward, I think there is a component Ian, that you're talking about, that people feel more at ease to report these incidents, but it doesn't mean that it's not a flag for how do we continue to try to solve this.
Good. Okay, sorry, Tony.
So through you, Mr. Chair, just maybe two comments and just springboarding on the stats. I love stats, but I just want to make sure that the narrative and the context of the numbers is always out there as well. Because you could take that number and you can make your own narrative, right? And so I think given the nature of the intimate partner violence and the necessity to come forward or the fear to come forward, that is reflected in the numbers. So we have to look at it as a positive. I think we talked about this many years ago, that we were anticipating that this number was going to go up and then start petering down, hopefully, with other programs that we offer in the community. My question, that was a comment. My question is, when we compare ourselves with other communities, I mean, predominantly intimate partner violence is a female violence. They're usually the victim. When we look at other communities and the composition of male to female ratios, right? I would anticipate if you have a community with a lot more males in it, your intimate partner violence is not going to be as high as it is in another community with a different type of ratio. Does that community composition come into play at all when we look at these numbers at all? I'm just a quick question there. Maybe it's not a good question. Sorry.
It's a good question. I wouldn't say it's quick.
Aaron, do you want to start? And yeah.
Sure, Chief. Yeah, I can maybe provide a little insight and reflecting just on an earlier report, likely from 2024, 2023, those rates of victimization and that demographic you're looking at, I think is fairly consistent nationally. I don't know that we've drilled down specifically on that, but knowing that certainly more than 3/4 victims are female, and we know that they're disproportionately women and girls are disproportionately represented in both of these forms of violence.
So I don't know if we've adequately answered your question. I think that what I can say is we have deep analysis that's done with our intimate partner violence unit amongst all the partners in the Family Violence Project and even the Child Youth Advocacy Center and so on. We recognize that there's nuance to everything, and so the rates of victimization are certainly, as Aaron has highlighted, disproportionately targeting women and girls. But we do acknowledge that there's LGBTQIA plus relationships where there's violence and concerns. There are males and men that are disproportionately targeted for some offenses. And one example would be exploitation online, where men and certainly teenage boys are essentially far more disproportionately targeted for some of those offenses for online sexual luring and exploitation when it comes to the sharing of intimate images and so on. So the data matters and the nuance matters. There's no doubt that within the spectrum of gender-based violence that women and girls are disproportionately targeted, and that's why it's has that label of gender-based violence. But we'll continue to provide that analysis, and that's where the continuum of support needs to be. But we want no victim, no survivor, and no individual to be lost in any of the care that we can provide for what we do and what our community partners provide as well.
Okay, thank you, Inspector Matthias. I think last item for the day is actually the monthly Chief of Police report. I'm assuming you're going to take this one, Chief?
It is mine, and before I launch in that, I wanted to acknowledge the delegation that we received. I should have just added earlier just to comment, just to say we have been in touch with that individual who provided the delegation, all the documentation, and we are committed to working with her. We have been working with her on all of her concerns. We appreciate when people come forward and provide those concerns to us, and also working with our partners within the City of Kitchener, downtown Kitchener area, and Victoria Park. And we will continue to address those issues. They're complex issues impacting perceptions and realities of community safety. And just wanted to acknowledge that because we don't receive too many delegations to the board, but our role is to ensure that we're responsive to every concern. So with that, I will move ahead with the Chief of Police report for 2 months. This is a look back to the end of June into July and into August as well. And want to highlight some of the incredible frontline and investigative work that our members are carrying through. Just looking at some examples of the many frontline interventions that we have, also aided by our crime analysis team. So looking at theft from vehicle, which is a common occurrence across the region, our crime analysis team and through the stratified policing model looked at a flurry of theft from vehicle incidents, and through the analysis, we linked more than 50 individual incidents to one person, essentially proving the narrative that some individual is responsible for a high level of crime. And ultimately, through this collaborative work, a 44-year-old Waterloo male was charged with over 200 criminal offenses related to theft from vehicles, for instance, that occurred throughout the first half of 2025. Another incident of great intervention was late July near the Waterloo Region International Airport, a traffic stop of an individual wanted on an outstanding warrant for several offenses led to the discovery of evidence of drug trafficking, and ultimately an imitation handgun and evidence of drug trafficking were discovered, and that individual was charged with various offenses. Similarly, looking at great police work and resolution, that in July 23rd, there was a break-in to a business in Cambridge that occurred. About $30,000 worth of power tools, plumbing tools, wiring, copper tubing, and so on was stolen. And after about a week's worth of investigation and the completion of a search warrant, we recovered all of the stolen property that was returned to the owner. And the investigation has continued in terms of who was involved. Looking at another great effort by our Drugs and Firearms Unit, who completed a search warrant at 2 Kitchener residences. We discovered a large quantity of drugs that were being trafficked, as well as a firearm and Canadian currency. And as a result, a 46-year-old male was arrested and charged with multiple offenses. Just again, highlighting our commitment to drug trafficking enforcement and our investigative efforts across multiple teams. Wanted to highlight the wrap up of two investigations. One was related to a shooting incident that occurred back in April and the University and Weber Street Avenue North area in Waterloo. Ultimately, we made several arrests involving a 15-year-old male, a 25-year-old male, and a 24-year-old male in connection to this shooting incident and a number of other offenses. And reaching all the way back to November of 2024, a tragic homicide that occurred at a Better Tent City in Kitchener, where a 39-year-old male died. Ultimately, through the course of some tireless investigative efforts through multiple investigative teams, we arrested a 19-year-old male for first-degree murder in late July, and also a 22-year-old male from Ottawa with accessory after the fact, and wanting to recognize our local efforts to resolve this investigation, but also many other police services who took part in aiding this investigative resolution. Switching to our commitment to road safety, displayed on the screen are the efforts of our traffic enforcement unit, as well as our frontline officers dedicated to traffic enforcement and visibility and education. You can see the high number of fatal 4 offenses occurring throughout July, and also a really impressive effort by our traffic services unit, who completed a commercial motor vehicle safety blitz over 2 days at the end of June. This team completed over 280 commercial motor vehicle inspections. 90 vehicles were taken out of service for safety defects. 188 charges were laid, and over 100 warnings were issued, resulting in a number of offenses and suspensions and so on. So we are committed with other police services through this effort. We were teamed with the OPP, Peel, Guelph, Halton, Ministry of Transportation, and the Ministry of Finance on these collaborative commercial motor vehicle efforts. Very proud of our community and our police service to again take up the backpack challenge once again. Over the past couple of months, we've been gathering backpacks, school supplies, and other financial donations. Our goal this year was to reach about 5,000 backpacks, and we've exceeded that goal once again. We have raised 6,000 backpacks and unparalleled amount of donations of school supplies and resources. And the team has been mobilized across the region in 21 community centers and organizations, distributing those backpacks to those participating in the program. And just to give you a snapshot of all the donations, all the mobilized efforts of our community, just an incredible outpouring of generosity and support to give everyone involved a lift as they head back to school in a few short weeks. So very proud of our service in our community for once again rising to that challenge. Lastly, we're very proud to have partnered with an organization and a commitment to something called Garage 529 or Project 529. This again is a collaborative effort between police services, bike sale retailers, and our community to put a stop to vehicle theft, to help with the visibility of vehicle theft, the recovery efforts, and also to assist in police investigations. And we're very proud to have launched this within the last couple of weeks. And we look forward to rolling out more news and more good news stories on bike theft recovery and our investigative efforts for enforcement. So throughout the course of the summer, we have been busy across the region, celebrating, joining, and being immersed in our community, and very proud to have celebrated. And we expect that will continue as we move into September and to the fall events. So subject to any questions and comments, that's the Chief of Police report for July and August. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. You've been up to no good apparently for the last 2 months. Lots to go. Congratulations to you and the team. Any questions or comments? No, thanks, Chief. Appreciate that. Okay, I think we're just about to wrap up on new business. There is no future agenda items. I don't think we have any. Just a note, information. We have public input sessions coming, which are the board's input sessions for the community on September the 29th and October the 27th. Will be 2 opportunities. That information is available on the website.
It will be.
It'll be available on the website if people want to participate. All the information on how to register and be part of that will be made available. So we'll look forward to seeing those in the community that have thoughts and suggestions for our, as we begin our, well, the board starts its part of the board of the budget consultation. I know the staff work on it all throughout the year. And with that, we'll move to adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Doug and Tony, all those in favor?